As dads, some days we feel like we have all the answers, and some days we feel like we don't have a clue. If that describes you, you're at the right place. This is the All Pro Dad Podcast. This is the All Pro Dad Podcast. Hey, my name is Ted Lowe, and I'm your host, and I am joined by two other dads, Mr. Rodney Bussell. How you doing, buddy?
Good. How are you?
Mr. Buck Buchanan.
The one and only.
The one and only. And each week we take a look at, you hear the Alabama, just each week we take a look at.
Each week we take a look.
Each week we take a look. Each week we take a look at just one question, and we talk about what we've done right, most of what we've done wrong, and leave people with one pro move. But I've got to say this as we jump into this. We've been doing the podcast for a few months now.
Yeah.
You do not know the grief that I have taken from friends. Oh, so you're a professional dad now. And my son's girlfriend went, because it's All Pro Dad Podcast.
Yeah.
And she asked him, so is your dad the professional dad? I have gotten so much grief. So here's what
My answer is always yes.
My answer is
yes.
See, Buck would. You would have just said absolutely. We're like...
I would too, Buck. Yeah.
Come on now.
Yeah. So, okay, we're going to go with that. But no.
Let us help you.
So our question of the week is, how do I deal with a rebellious child? How do I deal with a rebellious child? And how do we define that? Well, depending on what age you're in, that could be, my toddler's rebellious, and every time I say no, gives me that cunning look and does whatever. We'll talk about that, but also the little bit of a deeper things. But before we get too deep, I need to ask you guys, what was the craziest thing you ever got in trouble for growing up?
You got one?
I was a good kid, man.
Me too.
I didn't.
Perfect.
I can't tell you a story when I got one. Senior year, high school. So up to my senior year, I hadn't missed any days of school. So I was, like I said, I was a good kid, man. I didn't really do a whole lot. And then, so we decided to do that annual senior skip day. And so we skipped. And so we had like a little lake somewhere in our area in Hopkinsville, Kentucky. So I had to give a shout out to my hometown. And so we was going to the lake that day. All of us was going up, anteing up in cars. We went by my house, and my mom happened to be at home at that time. And then she, we went, grabbed our stuff, went on to the lake, and then the school called my house, and they were like, Rodney didn't come to school today. And she was like, yeah, I know. She started listing all my friends who was with me. And then so when I get back, she told me to the school call. She said, why didn't you just tell me? Why didn't you just tell me you were going to skip today? I would have been cool with it. And so all my friends give me a hard time to this day. So for Craig, Anthony, and all y'all, Jeff, I'm sorry still.
My mom ran it up.
It's your public apology.
Public apology.
Look at the camera.
You made it all the way to senior skip day. She's like, I don't even know what to do. You've never done anything bad. But
so
what about you?
I do remember one.
Okay.
And so I'm going to preface this with the 90s, and it was just a different time. And so there was a time where my parents, we lived in North Carolina. My parents worked in downtown Charlotte, and they would ride together. And it was the summertime. And back in the 90s, you left your kids at the house in the summer. You didn't need a babysitter.
Right.
Because honestly, I felt like there was nothing to get into. And but my parents left a set of keys to the truck that was in the driveway. And I didn't drive the truck out. I was in elementary school. I was in, I think there's sixth. So I was in middle school, sixth grade, probably, something like that. Sixth or seventh. And so we had friends over, but I would get in the truck because I loved cars, and I would sit in the truck and everything like that. Well, one day, I guess I'd let, what would you call that? The destructive thought kind of take over.
Yeah, a little Fred in your head.
Yeah, and I turned the truck on, and it worked. And so then I would drive the truck in the driveway just back and forth, and I figured like no harm done, right? Well, a friend from the neighborhood was like, I want to get in and ride with you, and he got in the back. It was an extended cab, and he sat in the back, and I thought I killed him because I backed it up, and then I stopped. I hit the brakes, and the back of his head smacked the back window so hard, and it didn't break the window or anything, but like the thud of like the mirror, like boom, and I was like, oh my gosh!
And he was like, never the same.
He like fell over and everything. I was like, I killed him. And luckily I didn't kill him, but everything was fine. But like the guilt overtook me when my parents got home because I was.
Did you tell him?
I parked the truck back, turned it off, got out, went inside, and I was like, okay.
Did you tell him?
Yeah, I totally did. Because it was just, I was a good kid.
Yeah.
And so the guilt was just eating me alive.
Concussion.
And then my parents got home. They're like, hey, how was today? I was like, that's good. It's fine. And then it was just, I had to tell them. I was like, I drove your truck.
Gosh. You guys are, oh, wow. That is some weak stories you guys have got.
I mean, I'm sure I did something. I just don't remember.
Oh, my poor dad. I've had to apologize. Dad, I'm so sorry. I'm just so sorry you had to raise me. I just was sneaky and would do all the craziest things. I'd gotten in trouble for one thing. So he told me, he said, I want you to rake all the leaves. Like we had a basement. We had these little walls, retaining walls going into the basement. And it was full of leaves. And my dad said, I want you to rake those leaves. And my mom passed away, so there wasn't a mom there to like tell us like don't be an idiot, and which happened a lot. And so I thought there's no need to rake these when I can just set them on fire. And we had no lighter, so I just took a little newspaper, put it to the stove, and I'm coming through the house with like a lit newspaper, like a torch. I toss it into the leaves, and it goes woof. And I was like, ooh, this is a situation. This is a situation. And I had to call him at work, and he comes down. And I mean, I'm out there with the water hose that just was
not good enough.
Yeah. And
hey, but you didn't have to rake, though.
Yeah, so I get in trouble. That was back in the day. But
I say mission accomplished.
Anyway, I don't know. Listeners are like, get on to the point, but we're moving on here. So the question of the day is, how do I deal with a rebellious child? Why do you think that is such a difficult thing for dads
to deal with a rebellious kid?
Yeah, like what's the sticky point like in the middle of that? Because I define rebellion as a kid does something, you try to help them navigate it, and they just keep doing it over and over.
I think men have maybe a natural bent to control, and to control situations, and to control outcomes. I mean, I feel like a lot of guys kind of thrive in that, and they thrive in situations where they can control some things or the outcomes. And I think with kids, just so unpredictable sometimes. And so I think anything that's outside of their control becomes an issue. And I think that's the true for me. I'm not saying, I would not say I'm a controlling person, but I would say that I guess my heart is more calm when I know that what is being done is, within my control. Or
right. No, that makes sense. What do you think, Rodney?
I like what Buck said. I mean, I know also a lot of time we come from particular backgrounds of, a lot of us in sports or some type of order, in our lives. And then when we try to bring that into our households, a lot of times have some type of order and structure, and then when someone or our children get outside of that structure, then that anger that we probably haven't dealt with our own selves comes out in some kind of way. So it can be in our language, it can be physical, so then that's why I think it's hard for us to deal with that. A lot of times to be honest, we hadn't dealt with our own stuff. So we take that on our kids, and we have an expectation for our kids that a lot of times we haven't even met ourselves.
That's true. That's more truth than I'm comfortable with, Rodney.
I'm sorry.
So, thank you.
That's a lot.
That's going to be counseling
me.
material right there. So I want us to get quicker into application because I think guys are probably feeling that, right? They're feeling the tension of it. How do you deal with in a loving way with a rebellious child? Rodney, do you have any thoughts on this? We've talked about this before.
Yeah, man, it hits home. For us, we dealt with it for a long time. To be honest with you, we're seeing some of the fruits of it, right now. For me, it was more of a let me try to love in spite of. We had a situation with ours that it was my stepson. We bumped heads. As he got older, I was there in his life for a long time, but as he got older, we ended up bumping heads. He really wanted to be with his biological, which is understandable, but just the way it was happening in the house, my male pride kicks in, and I'm like, no, you ain't about to do this, not in my household, so then the funny thing, you think, man, I wasn't always saved, so.
I know how to do things.
Yeah. So don't push me there. So dealing with that kind of stuff, man, it was difficult, but you try to love as much as possible. Now on the other side of it, years later, I can look back and say, I wish to understand the heart of a child is no different than the heart that I have, that sinful heart that I have. My child has a sinful heart too. And Bodie Bacham calls them vipers in diapers. So you look at the kids when they're growing, you see certain things within them, and then they're kids. They have a sinful bent, just like we have a sinful bent.
Yeah.
And if we don't understand the grace and the mercy that we received, we won't give it to them.
That's good. That's good. I know for us, we became full-time guardians of our youngest daughter when she was 9, and it was just different. Like you're talking about, talking about your son in the last episode or your stepson in the last episode, going, wow, he's been down, I think you said 3 years old. And so she had a lot of experience by 9, and not all of it, a lot of it was really hard and really traumatic. And I remember saying to her, you're going to respect my wife and you're going to respect me. And the counselor literally laughs at me. She goes, good luck with that. Right. But I'm going to demand a behavior. And I was like, oh, wow, like that's my house, right? Mm-hmm. This is how I work. And so that's a tough thing. And I had to come in a lot of grace with that. And I say this, it just kills me to say it out loud. I said to her one time, like I was just so frustrated, and she just kept doing the same thing over and over. And I said to her, I didn't even say it out loud. I said, I give up. I give up. You just do what you're going to do. I give up. And I just think how damaging that had to be to her little heart. And I went back and said, I'm not giving up on you, but I just can't. Those are those words that are just seared. And so I think that if, having a daughter that struggled with that, being a rebellious kid myself, my poor dad, I think I'm never going to give up on you. It's some pretty powerful words. Why do you guys think it's important to understand what's behind the rebellion? Like what's going on there? Why would that be important?
Well, I think for me in my situation right now, my kid, my oldest is 10, my youngest is 7. And so there's probably some listening that are saying you have no idea. I haven't hit the teenage years with them or anything like that. And so I'm trying to glean from you guys too, who have older kids, of what should I be looking for? what should I be working on for myself? Because we are an example to our kids and stuff. But I think, at least for me, in in the times when I was rebellious. I mean, in the ways that I was rebellious.
Ripping off cars.
Yeah.
Here.
I think it was a lot of it was me trying to figure out who I was and who I am, and not necessarily how much I can get away with. I think that's an aspect to it, with
Right.
all kids, of how much can I get away with. I think more so I was really trying to find what's my niche, or what's, what makes me tick, or, I think it was really just more of a figuring out myself. And I think when I see my kids right now being rebellious in certain ways, I think it's them trying to really figure out how to do their life with how they respond to things, their emotions, their bent on things. I've got one kid that he uses the word always all the time. I was like, and always and never. So just like those extreme words of you always get to do, I never get to do, and everything. And I work with him of saying buddy, that's not true. you know, and even when it's not directed to me, it's directed to his brother or to his mom or something, of just trying to get him to understand that, those words are very extreme and we should really think about what we're saying. So, but for him, it's his emotions are real quick.
Right.
It's super fast. He gets to, an anger point pretty quick. And so where my other one doesn't, he more kind of bottles it and then is super emotional on the back end.
Right.
So I think to me, it's the importance of figuring out what is causing our kids to be rebellious, or even ourselves to be rebellious, is, figuring out how to work with our emotions, especially the kids.
Yep.
So, yeah, read a book, Ted Tripp, Shepherding a Child's Heart. So it would, again, I read it, after my kids have gotten older, so I can look back on some of the things. So it talks about the heart of a child and how the sin was within the child's heart, just like it's inside of us as an adult. And just learning to disciple basically our children, with God's word, because they are going to rebel. Rebellion is inside of each one of us. Selfishness is inside of each one of us. And I think that we forget that once we get to a certain age, and we're going to say, I'm going to put you in the Christian school. I'm going to put you in all the sports, and we're going to have chores in our house. And by the time you leave out here, you're going to be the model kid. Right. Man, good luck. Because everybody don't come out that way. It doesn't come out to be that way because you designed it. They come out to be the way that God had designed them. And I think that we have to understand that these are God's kids that we're stewarding. Mm-hmm. And if we don't learn to steward our children properly and understand that they have a heart of sin, just like we have a heart of sin, So as I'm talking, I think about my son. He's 26. And, we sit down and we talk. Now he talks about some of the stuff that he did while we were gone. And I'm thinking, man, I thought you was good.
Yeah.
I thought you was my good kid. But at the same time, I understand that, all right, man, you have this sinful nature like we all do. Yeah. And so he would tell me, while y'all was gone, I was driving your car. While y'all was gone, me and you start naming his friends that we riding around with. I'm like, for real, man?
Oh, what is that? It must be pretty common because our son's just like this new twisted game that he plays. Every time we go out to lunch, he tells me and his wife, his wife, he's not married yet. And he tells my wife and I about these things he's doing. You're like,
right.
What?
Yeah.
So how do we, what I'm hearing from both of you is a lot there's grace and there's empathy behind they're finding themselves and they're figuring out who they are. How do we set boundaries? And Ronnie, I'll gear this towards you. How do we set boundaries in a way where they still feel loved instead of I tell you what I'm going to do, because that's always my default when I get frustrated. Not always, I can get sometimes. See, Buck, I'm using the word. I tell you what we're going to do. I can feel old school Ted coming out. Okay. Here's what we're going. I tell you exactly how this is going to happen.
This is how we're going to throw down.
This is going to throw down. And it was like that never worked. And so, how do we do that in a loving way? How did you guys do that? How did you set boundaries in a way where you felt like you were supporting him and not, pulling energy away from him or hurting him?
Having to learn to, again, we mentioned before, like getting over who I was, getting over myself, and the things that I think you should be doing. This is what I think you should be doing. We get caught up. We talk about kids getting caught up in social media. We as adults get caught up.
Yeah.
Looking at what other kids are doing, what other parents are doing.
Right.
So and so's kid, he's got straight A's. Why don't you have an A? Can you at least get one? So, and then we're gonna get upset with them. We putting on them what we see from other people, and just understanding that this is my child. My child is different than your child. So let me learn to raise up this child in the way that this child should go, and then my other child may be a little different. Because you mentioned how both of your sons handle things differently.
Yeah.
And so I'm gonna have to raise my 10-year-old different than my 7-year-old, because I can't do the exact same thing for each one of them.
Right.
So let me get in here. Let me go, instead of walking past their room and saying, clean up the room, let me go sit in your dirty room one day and play a video game with you.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? So, and just start talking about, what's going on at school. We can start building, things, relationships from that part.
Yeah.
James Dobson said years ago, I remember reading this book, it said, rules without relationship lead to rebellion.
Ooh.
And so,
say that one more time.
Rules without relationship leads to rebellion.
Yeah.
So we have to build relationship before we lay down the rules, or as we lay down rules, because they are one day going to be young adults.
Gosh.
And so how do we raise them up in a fashion that they can be productive young adults? And then I'm blessed to sit back now and to still go. Me and my son, big UK basketball fans. So we go to games still. We'll go take a trip. Sometimes he still want to hang out with his dad, have lunch with his dad. My daughter, she's 20, about to be 21. We still do things together. We work out together in the morning. Matter of fact, my kids are still young adults and adults. We still have that one-on-one time, together. So, and I know it's because of the relationship that I tried to establish when they were younger.
That's so powerful. Buck, do you have any thoughts?
Yeah, and I like what you said about rules and everything, because I think at the age that my kids are at now, I feel like setting ground rules is important because it's helping them kind of know their boundaries. And I think for rebellion, and when our kids are rebellious, we're human beings, so we get into an emotional state too. We get angry with what's going on. And we try our best not to be angry at them. We try to be angry at the situation. But I've found for my wife and I, of like us setting down ground rules helps us be able to take our emotion out of the equation, and just kind of a gentle reminder of like, okay, you remember what the rules are. Right. And so then it's like, it's not me bearing down my emotions on the children, trying to set new rules in that situation, but it's all of us kind of reminding ourselves of what the ground rules are. And like one of those for us is something our pastor taught us about, Christian living. Delayed obedience is disobedience. And in the moments, even when we delay our obedience, we're choosing to put ourselves before anything else, and what we desire, what we want, before what's been asked of us. And so that's the whole thing. And so like that's one of our kind of like core rules of delayed obedience is disobedience. And so when that kind of creeps up, we can, without infusing our own emotions, kind of say, do you remember the ground rules here? Delayed obedience is disobedience, and things like that. So I appreciate that too, of the relationship, because I think having our emotions untethered from the rules will actually help us to have better moments of building relationship around that parameter of having the rules too.
Yeah, I'm hearing a lot about approach, and a lot about heart towards our kids. And each week we give a pro move. And so I think, Rodney, to go back to what you said, I think for all dads, whether their kids are being rebellious right now or not, a pro move of the week is spend a time just connecting with your kid and not correcting your kid. Like, even if they're in the middle of it, take a vacation from being frustrated, take a vacation from trying to fix them. Nobody wants to be fixed, right? And just spend some time connecting with them this week. You guys, this has been so good. Thank you so much.
My pleasure.
It's
been
just
enjoyable.
Just not the easy part of being a dad, but most of us are going to hit it at some point. Thank you guys for listening, and we'll see you next week. Thanks for listening to the All Pro Dad podcast. All Pro Dad is the fatherhood program of the nonprofit Family First. Along with our motherhood program, iMom, we exist to help you love your family well. Subscribe to our daily email, the All Pro Dad Play of the Day, by going to allprodad.com/subscribe and get daily powerful and practical fatherhood tips in your inbox. The All Pro Dad podcast is hosted by me, Ted Lowe, produced by Bobby Lewis.